Hey guys, welcome back to Joanne's Learning Hub. Today we'll be learning about transport in animals, which is the circulatory system. So the circulatory system is the main transport system of all mammals. It contains the blood vessels with a pump and valves to ensure one-way flow of blood. So we can say that the circulatory system is divided into three parts: the blood vessels and the heart. Blood has the plasma, which is the liquid part of the blood, and it also has cells, which is the solid part of blood. It includes the red blood cells, white blood cells, and the platelets. We have three kinds of blood vessels: arteries, which carry pure blood, veins that carry impure blood, and the capillaries. The heart itself is divided into the right side and the left side, both of which have the atria and the ventricles. Moving on to the difference between the double circulatory system and the single circulatory system. In a double circulatory system, the heart pumps blood around the body in two circuits. So in the first circuit, the heart pumps deoxygenated blood to the lungs to take in oxygen, and the oxygenated blood returns back to the heart. And in the second circuit, the heart pumps oxygenated blood around to all other parts of the body to deliver oxygen to the body cells. And then the deoxygenated blood returns back to the heart. So mammals have a double circulatory system. Fish have single circulatory system, which means that the blood passes through the heart only once on a complete circuit. So there are some advantages of a double circulatory system over a single one. Returning blood to the heart after it has picked up oxygen in the lungs means that it can be pumped around the body at a higher pressure. This means that blood can be pumped around the body much faster, so more oxygen can be delivered to the cells. This is particularly important for mammals because they use up a lot of oxygen to maintain their body temperature. So moving on to the pathway or the circulation of blood through the heart. So first, from the superior and inferior vena cava, blood flows into the heart and into the right atrium. Then it flows into the right ventricle through the tricuspid valve. From the right ventricle, it goes through the pulmonary artery into the lungs, where it becomes oxygenated, and then it returns through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. From the left atrium through the bicuspid valve, it goes into the left ventricle, and from the left ventricle it goes into the aorta and then to the rest of the body. The pulmonary artery is the only artery in the whole of our body which carries deoxygenated blood, whereas the pulmonary vein is the only vein in our body which carries oxygenated blood. So what is the difference between the ventricles and the atria? Ventricles have thicker walls than the atria, as they have to pump blood out of the heart, either all around the body or to the lungs, which needs greater force and pressure. The atria simply receives the blood from the lungs or the body and supplies it to the ventricles. Then what's the difference between the left ventricle and the right ventricle? The left ventricle has thicker wall than the right ventricle, as it has to pump blood at higher pressure around the body, whereas the right ventricle just pumps blood at lower pressure to the lungs, which is very close to the heart. So this is a diagram of the heart. We can see the superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava, then the right atrium and the atrioventricular valve. Then it goes into right ventricle. Then from the semilunar valve, it goes through the pulmonary artery into the lungs, returns through the pulmonary vein back into left atrium. Then again through the atrioventricular valve, it goes into the left ventricle, then into the aorta, and then to the rest of the body. Now the septum separates the left and right sides of the heart so that the oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood remains separate. The coronary arteries are the blood vessels which are outside the heart. So they supply blood to the heart muscles. Our heart muscles need a constant supply of nutrients and oxygen so that it can keep contracting and relaxing. but the muscle is so thick that the blood which is inside the heart cannot diffuse into the muscles of the heart quickly. That's why our coronary arteries are the arteries which supply the heart muscles with oxygen and nutrients. So now, how does a heart attack or a cardiac arrest occur? A cardiac arrest occurs when a coronary artery gets blocked. So the cardiac muscle gets run out of oxygen, and thus they cannot obtain enough energy to contract. So the heart stops beating. Now, moving on to the next topic, which is coronary heart disease. What is CHD? So CHD is the blockage of the coronary arteries, which is mainly due to the buildup of cholesterol, which narrows the artery. This limits the amount of blood flowing to the heart. Other risk factors include stress, smoking, genes, age, and gender. How can we prevent CHD? We can quit smoking, maintain a healthy diet and a diet which contains less of saturated fats. We can exercise regularly. So how do we treat coronary heart disease? One method is aspirin, which reduces the risk of blood clots. The second is a surgical method. So one is the stents, which is a piece of metal or plastic mesh which is inserted inside the coronary artery to keep it open. And the second method is angioplasty. This is inserting a deflated balloon into the artery and inflating it. So this makes the artery open and widen up. Then next is a coronary bypass surgery. So here the blocked artery can be replaced by another blood vessel from another part of the body. So it creates a whole new pathway for the flow of blood. So the valves in the heart. Diastole is when all the muscles of the heart are relaxed and blood flows into the heart. Atrial systole is when the muscles of the atria contract and the muscles of ventricle are relaxed. So the blood flows into the ventricles from the atria. In ventricular systole, the muscles of atria relax and muscles of ventricle contract. So blood is forced out of the ventricles into the arteries. So we have three main types of blood vessels: the arteries, the capillaries, and the veins. So arteries carry blood at high pressure away from the heart. They carry oxygenated blood with the exception of pulmonary artery. They have thick muscular walls which contain elastic fibers. They have a narrow lumen. The speed of flow is fast and they do not have valves. Veins carry blood at low pressure towards the heart. They carry deoxygenated blood with the exception of the pulmonary vein. They have thin walls, large lumen, they contain valves, and the speed of flow is slow. Capillaries carry blood at low pressure within the tissues. So they carry both oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Capillaries have leaky walls that are one cell thick and the speed of flow is slow. So how does the structure of these blood vessels adapt to their function? Arteries have thick muscular walls with elastic fibers. So this helps arteries withstand the high blood pressure and to maintain the high blood pressure as it recoils after the blood has passed through. Arteries have a narrow lumen again to maintain the high blood pressure. Veins on the other hand have a large lumen. This is to maintain a low blood pressure and also to keep the blood flowing smoothly. Veins contain valves to ensure one-way flow of blood and to prevent the backflow of blood. Capillaries have walls which are one cell thick. So this allows substances to easily diffuse in and out of the cell, the capillaries. And capillaries also have leaky walls so that the blood plasma can leak out to form tissue fluid which surrounds all the cells. Our blood contains red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. So the red blood cell job is to carry oxygen from the lungs to all the cells in the body. They have a biconcave disc shape which gives it a large surface area for absorbing oxygen. They do not have a nucleus, so this again allows more room to carry oxygen. Red blood cells contain the red pigment hemoglobin, which binds to oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. So Once it binds to the oxygen in the lungs, it releases it in the body tissues, which allows it to be transported around the body to cells. White blood cells' main function is to defend against infection and fight against pathogens. White blood cells are comparatively larger than red blood cells, and white blood cells do have a nucleus. There are two types of white blood cells. One is phagocytes and lymphocytes. Phagocytes carry out phagocytosis by engulfing or digesting the harmful bacteria and cell debris. Lymphocytes produce antibodies and antitoxins. Platelets help blood to clot. So platelets are small fragments of cells. They do not have a nucleus. So they are involved in the process of blood clotting. So let us see the process of blood clotting now. So when an injury occurs, a blood vessel breaks. So the platelets stick to the broken vessel wall to block the cut. A soluble protein in blood plasma, which is fibrinogen, is converted to insoluble fibrin. The fibrin forms a mesh around the wound which traps RBCs and forms a clot. So this blood clot prevents excess blood loss and also prevents pathogens from entering the body. Plasma is the liquid that carries everything in blood. So plasma is a pale straw-colored liquid that carries almost everything in blood, which includes RBCs, WBCs and the platelets, nutrients like glucose and amino acids, which are soluble products of digestion, carbon dioxide from the organs to the lungs, ions, hormones and urea. So we had seen that capillaries have leaky walls to allow blood plasma to leak out of the capillaries to form the tissue fluid. So the tissue fluid is a fluid that surrounds all the cells in the body, and it is formed from the blood plasma and white blood cells that leak out of capillaries. The lymphatic system is made up of lymph vessels and lymph nodes. The walls of the capillaries are so thin that there are small gaps which allows plasma to leak out along with WBCs into the tissue fluid. So excess of this leaked out tissue fluid passes into the lymph vessels or lymphatic capillaries and travels as a fluid called the lymph. There are valves in the lymph vessels which prevents the backflow of blood. So it only travels in one direction, which is towards the heart. In the lymph vessels, there are also swellings called lymph nodes which contain large number of lymphocytes and phagocytes, which play an important role in defending the body against pathogens and infections. The lymph is then carried into the subclavian vein where it joins the blood again, thus to be transported back to the heart. So that's the end of this video about the circulatory system. Do remember to like, share and subscribe to my channel.